Okay, so good afternoon. For this week, we will be learning something about hyperbola. Now, this is the fourth and the last conic section that we will be learning in pre-calculus because actually there are only four conic sections. We already had the circle, the parabola. Last week was the ellipse, and this week is the hyperbola. And if you happen to watch the video earlier during our waiting time, there was this idea that was presented, and there was also a differentiation done between ellipse and the hyperbola. Let's have that differentiation here. So we have here the ellipse and the hyperbola. Okay. Now, if you will consider or if you can remember, an ellipse is like that. It's an oval shape. Ellipse. Oh, like that. Uh, like that. Basta it's an oval. Sorry for my figure. That's an example of a figure of an ellipse. While the hyperbola is it's like a parabola. They are like two parabola wherein when we cut an ellipse, parang sila nagkabagkad na ganon. So it's a combination of parabola and the ellipse context. Just that the hyperbola, if in the ellipse we have this one whole oval shape, when you cut this into two, and then you face them oppositely, you will have the figure of a hyperbola. Okay, so this is the figure of a hyperbola. If we have here a horizontal ellipse, we also have a hyperbola with horizontal transverse axis. We will get to know these terms later on. And if we have a vertical ellipse, we also have a hyperbola with vertical transverse axis. Okay, we will get to know them later. So if for the ellipse we have if the standard equation of the ellipse with hk as our center, we have x minus h end of quantity squared plus, by the way, we also have something here. What's below here in our equation? What is below this x minus h end of quantity squared? Type your answer in the chat box. Going back to our ellipse. Going to our ellipse, type your chat box. What is below the x minus h quantity squared? Correct. That is a squared. And on the other hand, we also have another term here, plus we have the y minus k end of quantity squared over what? Over b squared, exactly, is equal to 1. Always remember that for it to become standard in form, it should always be equal to 1. Okay? Having that kind of equation. Now, look at the difference, similarity and difference. For hyperbola, it has exactly the same format for its standard form. We have x minus h end of quantity squared over a squared. And then we also have y minus k end of quantity squared over b squared is equal to 1. Just that, what is the only difference between the two standard forms? What makes the hyperbola different from the equation of the ellipse? Type it in the chat box, please. Okay, only 2 submitted their answers. No sign. That's one from one of your classmates. Actually, I did not write it here because I want you to identify what is that sign here. What is this sign in the middle? Okay, exactly. We have the minus sign. There you go. So that is the only difference between the two standard forms. For ellipse, it's addition, simply because it's like putting into context na those two arcs are combined and formed an oval. It's like you added them, so nabuo yung bilog or nabuo yung oval. But for the hyperbola, since they are facing opposite directions and they do not form one whole oval, then consider that the sign is minus. Okay? That is the simple explanation in layman's term. Okay? Kindly show a reaction if that context is clear. Any reaction, please? Show a reaction if that context is clear. So therefore, you will know the difference between the two. They exactly have the same format, just that for the ellipse, it's addition. For the hyperbola, it is subtraction. Okay, take note of that. Good. Let's now continue. So this is just an activity that how I wish you also did. Ayan. So this is the ellipse and that is the hyperbola. Let's now move on with the hyperbola. Okay. When we say hyperbola, it has two forms, which I already explained a while ago. Okay. Since sabi ko naman sa inyo, you have to access your resources ahead of time kasi hindi na ako magdudwell into too much details for the basics. Okay? Pero I still need to make a rundown of all these concepts para maging clear in a way yung magiging discussion natin because we will be using all these terms in our discussion. Okay? So we have two types of hyperbola. We have this. There. And we also have this. Okay, these are just representations. Don't mind of the perfect image for this. Okay, so this is what we call the vertical transverse axis. Vertically, because if you will look at it, it's like it's standing in nature kasi it's vertical. And then this is considered the horizontal transverse axis because if you will look at it, if you will follow the arrows, it's like horizontal in orientation. As simple as that. And we also have this transverse axis. And because later on, as we graph them, we will be having this axis, which should not touch our hyperbola. Sorry for the term, sorry for the not so perfect image like that. Later on, don't worry, we have better drawing for this. Ayan. So later on, we will have a better illustration for this. And that's what makes it horizontal and vertical in nature. Okay. Now, and of course, we also always have the center. So let's now go into the parts of our hyperbola. Okay, let's take this. Let me make it a little bigger. Okay. So we have this illustration or the graph of our hyperbola. So let's just get to know all them. Okay, let's have this. What is this part? What is this one? Very simple. That is the center. Okay, that's it. Next, we also have the vertices. If you can remember, the parabola has its vertex there. It's either in the maximum point or in the minimum point. But still, this is considered a vertex. And in our video a while ago, while waiting, we our video made mention of it's like a parabola. However, there are two parabolas facing oppositely. So we have these 2 points here and there, and those are considered your vertices. Okay, those are your vertices. And if we have the vertices, the points on the other side naman, which do not touch our hyperbola, are then called the covertices. Kumbaga, supporting actors yung covertices natin. Because later on, as we do the graphing, we will be After getting the center, we will find the distance for the vertex and the co-vertices. And then we will draw a square or a rectangle. And from there, we will draw our axis, transverse axis. And then from there, we will be able to draw our hyperbola. Okay, don't worry. I am telling you, it's very easy. Okay, so we now have the center there. This is our center. You also have the vertices and the co-vertices. Okay, let's continue. So we also have the asymptote. By the way, where did you, have you, ay not yet. Asymptote kasi will be discussed further in your basic calculus kapag nasa limits na tayo. Nevertheless, I hope you have encountered the word asymptote already. Are you familiar with the word asymptote, by the way? Show a reaction in our chat box to see if you have any idea about asymptote. Okay, only 1, 2. The rest are just okay. The rest, no reaction, simply means they are not so familiar with the asymptote. Okay. So asymptote is this broken line. These are the 2 lines there. These brown lines. Ito. These are the 2 brown lines. This line, these 2 broken lines are called the asymptotes. And when we say asymptotes, these are lines that never touches the graph of whatever it is, of whatever function it is. So the asymptote also serves as like a barrier, as like a fence, like a boundary that will tell you do not go beyond this line, because that's the role of the asymptote, and that is to guide the movement of the curve on not to pass beyond that line. Okay, so these 2 broken lines are called the asymptotes. Okay, now show a reaction if you now understand what asymptote means. Show a reaction, please. Okay, basta isipin nyo lang, it's like actually, there's a joke that deals with asymptote. From the word itself, it's asim, maasim. At kapag maasim daw, yung isang tao, usually hindi siya nilalapitan. Kasi mas lamyabaw, ada mong makanita. So, it's an asymptote simply means hindi siya maaring, pwede siyang lapitan, pero it will never, the graph of the hyperbola will never touch it because of its smell. That's just a joke. The asymptote. Okay? That's it. Please take note of that. Basta, it serves as a barrier, a guide that the graph should not pass through. Okay. We also have the foci. The foci, of course, these are the 2 fixed points located inside each curve of the hyperbola that are used in the curve's formal definition. And the foci are this. It's just the same as the ellipse. Actually, an ellipse has foci as well. If we will be making this as an ellipse, parang ganito siyang lilitaw. If you can remember our ellipse. So it's like that. We also have our foci. In our hyperbola, it also has the foci. And just that, in here, nakapasok pa rin siya, pero in the opposite direction naman siya. Okay? Please take note of that. Let's also take note of the latus rectum. The latus rectum is this. This is the distance formed passing through our focus. Yan, that is our latus rectum. Okay. And then we also have our transverse axis. This is a line segment that contains the center of the hyperbola and whose endpoints are the 2 vertices of the hyperbola. Transverse axis, this is our transverse axis. Ayan. Just like what I tell you, it shows the direction or the orientation of your hyperbola, and that's where your transverse axis shows. Okay? And of course, the conjugate axis naman is the line, is a straight line through the center, which is perpendicular to the transverse axis and does not meet the hyperbola in real point. Okay? If this is our transverse axis, that's it. The conjugate axis naman is the other way around. This is our transverse axis. Yung kabaligtaran. And it's always perpendicular with our transverse axis. Okay? That's it. Let's now go into the details. By the way, before we continue, do you have any question or concern regarding the parts of the hyperbola? Are they all clear? Kindly show your reaction in our chat, in our reactions bar. Let me see if all the parts are clear with you, clear to you. Okay, good. Thank you so much. Let's now move on with the real drama. And you already know this. Let me remove you now. You already know this. I already explained this to you earlier. The formula or the standard form of hyperbola with horizontal transverse axis. Take note, with horizontal transverse axis, because we also have another one, the hyperbola with a vertical transverse axis. Okay, now let's go into this. So this is just the same process as that of our ellipse. Let's have an example. Instead of using this, I think I want to use our let's try this activity. This one. Let me try number number 2. Try natin to. So we have 16x squared plus 9y squared is equal to 144. There you go. So the process is just very easy. Actually, it's just the same as that of the ellipse. We must make our equation or the constant equal to 1. So what will we do? Sige nga, if you can remember the process in the ellipse, what will we do to make? Sa GenMat po, asymptote. Ayun, naalala na nila. Asymptomatic lang po alam niya. Sa GenMat po, yeah, in GenMat, yeah, that's it. You already, Miss Hazel must have taught you already of this. Okay, the asymptote. Now, the first step, to make it equal to 1, what should we do? Divide all of them by 144. Very good. That's correct. See, very easy. Divide all terms by 144, 144, and 144. Then this will be equal to 1. Next, what about this? What will we have? Anyone? 144 divided by 16. What's the answer? Okay, 9. Okay, it's 9. So we have here, that becomes 9. So we will have here x squared over 9. Got it? Tama? Next, plus. What's next? Okay, we have here naman. So we have y squared over, say when you divide this, that becomes 16. So we have here 16. So this is now the standard form of our equation. So from here, we can identify the center. The center is what? What's our center? Based on our horizontal transverse axis? Ay, sir, bakit po plus? Sorry. Thank you for that. I'm just checking if you are really understanding our process. And finally, someone noticed it. Correct. This should be minus. This should be minus because we are doing the hyperbola. Very good. Thank you for that. So our center is 0, 0. Correct? Okay. Next, what is our A? Oh, what is our A squared? A squared is what? A squared is 9. Get the square root. This will be equal to 3. So this is your A, correct? A is equal to 3. Okay. What about your B? What's the value for your B? B squared is 16. So therefore, B is equal to 4. Perfect. Oh, galing. That's it. Okay, that's it. Let me see our process. Standard form, find the center, and then get your A and B. Okay, and then all we have to do is to identify the horizontal transverse axis. You know this formula, pero ako gusto ko kasi automatic nag-graph ako. Shall we do the graphing automatically or let's do this process? What do you want? We follow pa this long process or graph na po? O graph na. Kasi automatic gusto ko gumagraph ako. Okay, let's do this. I'll just make my Cartesian plane. Ay, dapat pala naka-ano ako. Let me change lang the background, sorry. Dapat ganun akong background. There you go. Sobrang laki pala nun. Graph. Okay, this one na lang. O yun. Oh, this is a lot better. Okay, let me now make my graph, my Cartesian plane. Okay, and then 0 degree there. Dito na lang. Okay, so we now have our Cartesian plane here. Cartesian plane, there you go. So we now have our Cartesian plane. Okay, so let's now graph our center. Our center is at 0, 0. So let me graph it. It's here. That's 0, 0. Let me make it a little thicker. So this is 0, 0. Okay. And we also have from here, remember your A is with X. Therefore, where should I step from?